Climbing, an activity that I've been told used to be thought of as about as cool as bowling, which is, it's just such a fantastic sport. Everyone loves bowling. What a bunch of heroes, those bowlers. Climbing has exploded as of late in popularity. In 2014, there was like 300 climbing gyms, and as of 2023, now there's 622 and counting. That's an old statistic. But you probably already know how popular climbing is because you probably have a friend who's been trying to invite you to go to a gym and pay money to get covered in chalk and fall on your butt, right? Here's the thing though. Once you try climbing, some people bounce off it, but from my experience, there's something really appealing about it. It really sticks, even if you're terrible at it in the beginning. I don't know, there's something so satisfying about climbing. It's so social, it's so fun, you get a workout, I don't know, there's nothing really like it. It's not necessarily a sport when you do it. It can definitely be treated as a sport, but I don't think most people are like, oh, I'm going to training. I'm going to climbing training so I can win the climbing competition. And there are competitions, but I know few people who participate in those, right? So today I want to explore what makes climbing so satisfying, and specifically the art in climbing, the aesthetics in climbing. What's beautiful, what's satisfying, what is making this sport so popular and making people come back day and night and day and night and day. People are crazy. They're losing their fingerprints. My brother, he got me into it. He applied to this job where he needed to get fingerprinted because he was working in an elementary school and he didn't have any fingerprints, and he had to stop climbing for 2 weeks and grow his fingerprints back. People are gonna come, they're scraped up, they're driving 2 hours into nature to climb up a wall. What's the deal? So before I get into my spiel and talk about some books and resources that talk about aesthetics and climbing and just in games in general, some pretty cool stuff, I interviewed a couple people about this topic to see what they thought, right? So we'll jump into those. What's your name?
My name is Abdi Hafid Saeed Mohammed Ali said, but Abdi is just fine.
I'm David.
My name is Mohali.
My name is Tamir.
To me, I feel like art is sort of the unconventional expression of emotions.
They're like physical projection. So if someone's feeling a certain way, they'll go paint or go doodle or go draw, and I think that's really inherent to who we are as human beings. We need something obtainable in life, and art can often reflect what you need. I think it's also an embodiment of our differences, because you can look at a cool painting and understand the meaning of it, but someone else could not understand the same meaning that you derived from it, and I think that's really important and integral to art itself, and that's really beautiful.
To me, growing up, I always thought art was just painting colors on a canvas and just but going through high school and college, I think art can be displayed in different ways. As for example, some people might show art through clothing.
There's a bunch of aspects of art in climbing, when you're a route setter, thinking from that perspective, you're painting the picture of what you want people to see when they're climbing, and directing them in certain ways, and I think in that sense it's art. I also think that the color-coded routes themselves, or the scenic landscape outdoors when you're climbing, is also art, because climbing makes you really slow down and take a look at the smaller aspects of life.
When you first think about climbing, I don't think it comes off as art, but when you actually sort of dissect what it is, it's totally just the expression of emotion through an unconventional manner. So certain aspects of climbing definitely seem to fit that definition better. Maybe route setting would be more art compared to the actual climbing part of it.
Now here I need to talk about an important distinction between art and aesthetics, right? That will make the rest of this video less confusing. Art as I'm gonna define it for the rest of the video. This is not the legal definition, or I'm not gonna defend this definition out. This is just what it's gonna be, you guys. Art is gonna be something that's created, and aesthetics is gonna be a little bit more about the experience, right? So like Mahali just talked about, art is like the thing itself, right? And route setters are the ones who would create art in an indoor climbing route, right? And art in nature is the rock itself. But I think the interesting thing here that we're going to fixate a little more on is the aesthetic experience, which is what a person is going to come away with after experiencing said art.
Art, at least when we're thinking in regards to climbing, is like the movement of body and also the like aesthetic of the rock. And granite can have some really cool like stripes in them and stuff, and sandstone can have these more rounded features, whereas like limestone and granite can have these more sharp edges and features.
For art and climbing, there's different people. So like, let's think like different brushes. There's tall people, short people. So they all do in their own technique. You know, tall people, they might not need to jump. Short people, they might need to jump. So that's called dynos. Some people do different things as dynos and static. Some people like moving, jumping around. Some people like slowly. So that's is what art to me is, showing their creative mindset in their own way.
There's so many like potentially good looking lines. Recently, like I did one line and 7-8 moves, like not super long, but like each move is like really pumpy and like, you know, you're using a lot of energy. I've always feel like I've been more of like a explosive athlete. Like I like in short bursts using a bunch of energy.
How everybody takes climbing differently is very similar to how art is. You know, like I said earlier, everyone appreciates art differently, and I think in that sense, people also appreciate climbing differently because others can do a lot of dynamic movements and a lot of like jerky, like jumping movements, whereas other people, you know, like their static movements and like taking things slow, either because they're not able to do the dynamic movements or because they're just stronger at the static ones. And
I feel like the main aesthetic component of climbing for me is how I feel when I climb something in an aesthetic like way. Like oftentimes you might do this problem that you've been working on for a really long time, but even though you did it, you might not be satisfied with the way you did it just because it might have been sloppy. You can climb something in a more aesthetic way, and that's kind of what most climbers go for, to feel that harmony within yourself.
The aesthetic experience I want to get at here is the aesthetics of agency, which is kind of an abstract thing to talk about. The concept comes from Teen Nguyen's book, Games, Agency as Art. Really, really cool book. You should definitely check it out. But here, Nguyen talks about like games. I'm going to use video games as an example here. But the book talks about all sorts of games, card games, sports, etc. But like when someone's complimenting the beauty, the aesthetics of a video game, they're like, oh, it has a wonderful story, or beautiful visuals, or a great soundtrack. And Nguyen's like, okay, but books have good stories, music has beautiful sounds, and paintings have great visuals, right? Film has all those things as well. What are games doing that no other medium is doing for aesthetic experience? And Nguyen says that's the aesthetic of agency. Games like control and maintain agency. They make you do what they want you to do based on the rules and the goals within them. What would be more satisfying to you, like completing a really hard climb, like at your peak, or completing a difficult climb for you, but in a way that's very stylish?
I mean, it's hard to say just because they're completely different rewards that you get from it. Like when it's the very limit of your possibility and you do it through whatever means, even if it was ugly, like there is that like pushing your boundary and really like the improvement you feel in your own ability. But if you're doing one that's hard, but you do it in like the certain way that you want to do it and it's aesthetically pleasing, then that has a whole different reward to it. Like, it sort of feels like you've mastered this route, as opposed to just completing it or conquering it, you know?
It's also easy to get caught up when thinking about the aesthetics in games, especially sports, right? Is like the very physical things, or like things you experience when you're viewing sports, like the flow of movement. That's something when you're watching someone climb, you're like, wow, that was really good style, good flow. But the interesting things that Wynn brings up in his book about the aesthetic experience of agency are the internal experiences of agency. And when it comes to personal, internal aesthetic experiences, though, Nguyen has three kind of what he calls harmonies. And they're like really visceral and easy to understand once they're described. They're the harmony of solution, the harmony of action, and the harmony of capacity. Harmony of solution is the satisfaction you get from like actually doing the thing. Harmony of action is the satisfaction you get from just making an action, the effects that come from the action. And the one that I feel like we can all really relate to is harmony of capacity, which is when your skills perfectly meet the challenge. And it's just so satisfying. You bring everything to the table and you just accomplish your task, right? Wynn says that like this rarely happens in real life. Either things are way too easy or way too hard. And games are something that facilitates that just like wonderful experience at a really high frequency that nothing else can really do. What do you get out of climbing? Why do you climb? Like, what do you want from it?
It's sort of it's exactly the aesthetics and like the experience I get from completing these routes in the way that I feel is the most aesthetically pleasing.
I definitely want to challenge myself, and I guess what I want to get out of it is I like making goals, so I want to meet those goals, right?
All right, I'm just gonna send a message in the chat. So these are like 4 types of players as defined in this philosophy book we're reading, like philosophy of games. So there's intrinsic and extrinsic players, and striving and achievement players, right? So achievement is like you want to win, right? And then striving is like you want to struggle. You like the struggle, right? It's like intrinsic achievement play is like you play for this feeling of winning in itself, right? What extrinsic achievement play is you play for what comes with winning, like money in poker. Like some people play poker to get money, and or like Olympians, like they race most of the time not because they love to race in many cases, but because they want to win the medal, right? Like extrinsically, or maybe they just want to win in general. Well, like striving, on the other hand, intrinsic striving is play for the sake of like struggle itself. Like play wouldn't be satisfying if it wasn't hard. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
the guy who wrote this book, he plays games with his wife a lot, and he always tries to say, and his wife too, on the same level of skill, right? Because if one of them becomes too good at a game or too bad, you know, compared to the other, it's no longer fun, right? Like the struggle itself is literally why the game is fun. And then extrinsic striving play is play for the sake of what engaging in the activity brings to you instrumentally. Like for some people in climbing, like it could be strength or coordination, right? Like physical fitness or brain training. Which modes of, and it could be multiple, like, but
Yeah, I think it's weird. I think it might have started off like extrinsic achievement play. Like at first, it's like I just want to like be able to climb that, and like that's kind of like the equivalent of like getting your money in poker. That's what you want, right? Like you got that good climb under your belt. But I feel like the more I've been climbing, the more I realize that maybe I've been like intrinsic striving play. So what I'm really enjoying is just like the act of doing it, right? But I definitely feel like I had the mindset of like more like extrinsic achievement play, and suddenly just is my mindset has been shifting more to intrinsic striving. Just
yeah. So far in our mission to find out why people are so drawn to this sport, we've come to like two main conclusions, right? People really like the diversity of expression that exists within climbing. You'd think it'd be a very like exclusive sport. Like I always assumed that height was going to be a huge advantage, but it's actually not necessarily true at all. I'm a short person and I feel like I have more advantages being short and having my body type than I would if I was taller. Like it's much more easy for me to be dynamic and jump around. So that diversity is really appealing, and then the ability to challenge yourself at your own pace, right? But the one thing that actually everybody agreed on and was really quick to say was the community aspect. Seriously, like beyond anything else, people just love how social it is. I mean, there's not a lot of like activities where you just literally sit down next to other people and you're just forced to chat. I mean, there's nothing else to do, right? If you're not climbing, like no other sport really has that. I mean, I guess when you're on the bench, but it's like such a more casual setting, and the gyms, like anybody can come in, you know, and it's really easy to start a conversation too, because you're just like, oh, how did you do that one? Oh, can you help me with this? And yeah, it's really appealing to people.
What I'm looking for is saying hello to people, building friendships with people, climbing with people, and I think doing these things with a community is most helpful and what I'm looking for the most. I also think that when I'm climbing myself and when I'm climbing alone and not with the community, I think that I'm most looking for what's my body saying to me. You know, what am I like? Am I hurt right now? Am I sore? Am I not able to do this just because of like a physical thing or a mental thing? And just kind of talking with myself about how I'm feeling in the moment, just so that I'm not repressing my feelings during a climb. I think that a lot of the time I push aside everything else to focus on one thing and I have tunnel vision, but I think that when I'm climbing, it's okay to yap, and it's okay to like not get a climb and be like super silly about it. And I think that a lot of the time I'm super serious about a climb, and I'm hoping to like change that dynamic with myself and with others. Yeah.
Yeah. So like the individual versus community like aesthetic experience of climbing is very different.
Yeah.
Like it's like a whole different activity almost.
Everyone here started at different levels. Some people progress faster, some progress pretty slow, but we're all in this community to help each other grow. So I know it's kind of like sounds bad to say, but I want to be better than everyone else, showing them off the techniques while also encouraging others, like transformational leadership, where you know transform, give them vision. So I know it's like not a flex, but I come for 3 months. I seem pretty good, and I want to help encourage other people so you can do good too.
No, that's a really nuanced take, because you are being competitive and you do want the achievement, you do want to beat people, but you're doing it in a way that will facilitate like the most growth of skills, right? So you're not doing it because you want to win. You're doing it, well, I mean partially, but like the real motivation is like you want to get better, right? Like if you could beat people but you never got better, there'd be no point, right?
And I don't even think it's like beating people. Like if you do good, nobody's
That's
preying
true.
on your downfall. You know, they're like, oh my gosh, he did it. Like everyone's always encouraging. So that's why another reason I like climbing, the community. People always there for you. People you talk to, you literally talk and then just climb, talk and climb. So you build a sense of relationships while climbing.
Everywhere that I've climbed, like America or Japan, like I've been in really good communities. And I think that's partially the reason why I am still climbing, is because like climbing with people, you know, you can challenge each other and push each other, but also there's support too and advice, which I really appreciate. So yeah, like the community here, like I think the only reason I've been able to progress as much as I have is because I'm climbing with people who are stronger than me.
Yeah, but overall, I mean, I really wanted to kind of get into Nguyen's philosophy and all the interesting stuff he wrote about games, and he actually wrote articles about climbing too. But what really stood out, like what's really drawing people to this activity, is it's just such a brilliant facilitator for community, making friends, social interaction. It's like really incredible. Doesn't seem like it's built for social interaction, but for some reason it's just so effective at it, right? Well, that's all I've got for today. Thank you for watching this video. Bye bye.